It is indeed a negotiating tactic because, as President Trump's recent track record shows, he's done it with Japan, the European Union, and now the most recent one is, of course, Korea. So it is something which he has been practicing, and I think the Indian government was also apprehending something on these lines, since he did not agree to the deal which the USTR had also vetted for the past week or 10 days. So that is one thing. The second thing is about the options. Well, India is not going to give up negotiating because it is committed to having a two-tranche agreement. The first tranche is expected to get finalized by October or November. And the US team is coming to India around the 25th of August to talk further on this. So that is going to take place irrespective of what is going to happen on the 1st of August by way of the additional tariffs. The third point is that the options are, of course, that India may give in a little bit, but the chances of that are not very bright because India's red lines are very clear. That's in right. Agriculture, especially genetically modified foods and dairy. There is no scope for moving back.
Jayant, I want to explore this issue of what seems to be Washington's tactic of playing hardball now and also threatening buyers of Russian crude oil and Russian defense equipment like India with punitive tariffs. We were speaking about this earlier on CNBC, earlier on this morning on Squawk Box with Carlos Casanova. I want to play that soundbite from our earlier guest, and then we'll get back to you, Jayant.
It seems that Trump is now pivoting to being a little bit more punitive on imports of energy and military equipment from Russia. So that perhaps could be the sort of key to opening up that trade deal if India commits to more purchases of US energy and also US military equipment.
That was Carlos Casanova, a senior economist Asia at UBP. Jayant, so if Washington now wants to impose punitive tariffs on buyers of Russian oil and defense equipment, including India, potentially, how is that changing the narrative? And does this all add up to the vested interest that the US has and putting pressure on India to step up, as part of a deal, purchases of US defense equipment and energy?
The Indian dependence and continuing purchases from Russia of defense equipment has come down considerably in the past 5 or 10 years. And the US, from a low level of 1% of India's defense purchases, has now gone up to about 13% in the last year. So India has already started diversifying its purchases of defense equipment. Whether it will buy from the US in even larger quantities is something which India will take a very close and hard look at, because the decision will be taken on absolutely rational basis. If there is scope for joint production, transfer of technology, and a few other conditions, then India will, and of course the state-of-the-art equipment, which is being offered to India. So these are some of the considerations which will weigh on India's mind. As far as this issue about Russian oil is concerned, I think one of the things which has perhaps not escaped the attention of economists the world over is that if Russia were unable, hypothetically, to sell its oil to India and China, then there would be an upward pressure on the prices of global oil. And that would also impact the US and cause inflation. At the moment, of course, inflation is not rearing its head, in the US because of the inventories which have been built up ever since President Trump came to office. But those inventories are going to get, used up in another 3-4 months. And after that, I think the cost of living also will start going up. Inflation will start biting even in the US. And that is going to cause a considerable amount of distress, especially to the poorer people. And that will have its political repercussions, especially since the US is going to have an election for at least 1/3 of the elected representatives come November 2026. So these things have to be factored in. India does not expect these tariffs to last very long, but it is prepared for the long haul. If they do last, India will, I think, not compromise on its national interests, as has been brought out yesterday also in a statement from the government.
Exactly. And agriculture is central to that uncompromising approach when it comes to a very politically sensitive domestic sector, which unfortunately, like it or not, is where Washington clearly wants to see improved market access. And the red lines have been drawn very clearly around agriculture by the Indian negotiators. So, Jayant, how do you think this needle is going to be threaded ultimately?
Well, I think it's a well-known fact that 46% of India's working population is dependent on agriculture, and another 11% on allied activities like dairy farming. So we have a huge number of people whose livelihoods depend on agriculture and dairy farming. And most of the farmers have an average of just over a hectare of land, which is small by any proportion. The second thing is very little of the Indian land, less than just under 50% is irrigated. So farmers get just one crop. They are dependent on the rains. So that is the status of Indian agriculture. It is a livelihood issue. So to confuse it with, India denying market access, I think is not quite correct. And India does not have elbow room to compromise in this matter. So whether the U.S. takes it or not, the offer that India has made, which I understand are quite substantial in terms of industrial products and many agricultural products, barring corn, soya, and dairy products. So if the U.S. takes that excellent offer and goes ahead, so be it.
So it's not all or nothing. It's select market access to those agricultural sectors, subsectors that you just mentioned. So that's what the negotiating is going to be about. So, Jayant, ultimately, is a phased deal, is a mini deal, or a final deal by September, October, the so-called deal by Diwali, is that all being kicked into the long grass now, or are they still viable timelines?
I think there are still viable timelines because a lot of progress has been made in the past 5 rounds of negotiations. And we do hope that things will come to a conclusion by October. And of course, the US also, one of the things which I wanted to mention is that India yesterday as well stressed the point that it is looking for a balanced deal. Now, balance means that it can't be take and take only. It has to be also give and take. And that give will have to come from the US by reducing not its recently inflated tariffs, but from its pre-Trump days tariffs. And for that, it needs a trade promotion authority from the US Congress, which it doesn't have. The present administration doesn't have that. And that is what India would like to have an assurance on, that for all the concessions it is willing to make, the US will also make concessions. And then only it will be a two-way deal. A give and take would be there.
Jen, it was interesting. We were speaking earlier about Tata buying Italy's Iveco. Do you think India's time would be better spent pursuing an India-EU trade deal?
Yes, definitely. Not only with the European Union, which I think is almost near conclusion because we have set a deadline for concluding it by December of this year. It may get advanced in view of what the U.S. Market looks like. India is also negotiating with other countries, and it could also deepen its trade pacts with Japan, Korea, and the ASEAN, which are already there for quite some time, more than a decade. So India is going to hedge its bets,
Yes.
which any country would do.
Exactly.
And it is likely to, look around for diversifying its exports destinations.
Yes.